The existence of witches is not a myth in Macedonia in the 19th century. Many people have had encounters with such witches, or what they call the wolf eaters. Parents would scare their naughty children with the name of those wolf eaters, and this powerful being is an old maid, Maria, an elderly witch with a scorched body who has the ability to transform into any living creature. One day, taking the form of a cat, Maria enters the hut of a village woman who has just given birth to a baby girl not too long ago. Once the woman sees the old witch sitting beside her crying, Navina, she gets so terrified that she falls to her knees and begs for mercy. The young mother promises to give her child once she turns 16 and let her watch the child grow up until then. Maria is not satisfied with the cross carved on the lower forearm by the woman as a token of her commitment, so she takes away Navina's voice. That very evening, the woman decides to hide away her baby far away, hoping Maria would never find her. But will she really be able to hide Navina from the witch's hands? However, she hides her precious little daughter in the deepest cave and raises her without letting her come into contact with the outside world. And when she would visit Navina, she would often wipe her up and let her daughter sleep in her lap. Time passes and Navina turns 16. One day while her mother falls asleep, Navina makes an attempt to escape from these high walls, only to be discovered by her mother. Such a rebellious act of hers could expose her to the wicked witch, so the anguished mother hits her. Then one day, her fear becomes a reality when Maria enters the cave in the form of an eagle. Navina gets fascinated at the sight of the bird inside the cave. But when her mother sees the bird, realizing it's the old witch Maria, she throws pebbles, running behind it to chase it away. Navina's mother returns back a while later, but she seems to be a different person. In fact, it's not her real mother, but is Maria in her mother's appearance. And with this, she asks Navina to follow her. Once she reaches outside, everything is so new to Navina, and for some time she even has some difficulties adjusting to the outside air. Still thinking of Maria to be her mother, Navina obediently follows her, and once they come to a small hut that has livestock in it, Maria kills an animal and drinks its blood. She then comes up to Navina, scratches her chest, and spits a mouthful of blood on her injury. Then she burns a twig and swirls it at the scratches, which prompts it to heal, but she notices Navina's nails growing into sharp black nails. Now, as they begin walking, Maria starts pulling out Navina's mother's guts from the hole in her chest and goes back to her old self. But even after witnessing all this, Navina still follows Maria. In the following days, while they spend their time together, Navina would sleep on Maria's lap like she used to sleep on her mother's lap. Maria teaches Navina to drink the blood from dead animals, but she never really could get used to it. She would often wish that her old mother would come back, but she does not ever want to go back to those high walls again. One day while roaming the woods, a man approaches Navina with ill intentions. Not even a minute passes by and Maria comes by, killing him. At night, Maria hits and scolds her, asking her if she was just going to stand there as he makes his move. All this time, Maria keeps trying to teach Navina to kill animals for blood, but seeing how Navina's not learning a thing and is busy playing with the fish and rabbits, Maria gets angry at her. She angrily smacks the back of Navina's head, which makes the infuriated girl throw a stone at Maria's back. In a flash, the provoked Maria comes to her and dunks her head into the stream, and before walking away, Maria tells Navina that she means nothing to her and goes her way. Nevertheless, Navina goes to search for Maria when she sees the woman stuffing the guts from the dead wolf into the hole in her chest, before transforming into the wolf, and naturally, this leaves the young girl in utter confusion. At this point, Navina begins questioning the real identities of things around her, despite how they look, and on top of that, the poor girl ends up suspecting herself to be a devil as well. Then one day, Navina's attention is grabbed by a woman giving birth in the cornfield near a village. Upon entering the village, a little girl runs away screaming when Navina extends her hands to touch her. Nevertheless, the girl's cry for help startles Navina, so she runs and hides in the nearby house. There, she hears the crying of a newborn. Noticing this, Navina approaches the child, but the child's mother, Bosilka, misunderstands her, trying to hurt her child. So Bosilka attacks her, only to be unintentionally killed at the hands of Navina. Imitating what she's seen Maria do with the guts of the dead, Navina also puts Bosilka's guts stretching the hole in her chest. And once the transformation is complete, the body of the real Bosilka disappears, only leaving behind her clothes. Now, seeing the transformed Bosilka naked roaming outside the house, Bosilka's mother-in-law wraps her into a piece of clothing and tames the child. On top of that, Bosilka's husband slaps her after seeing her in a disturbing condition. However, the mother-in-law seems to love Bosilka despite her daughter-in-law suddenly losing her mind after childbirth. In the next few days, Bosilka's mother-in-law teaches her how to do household chores, and Navina learns to imitate the way she smiles. However, she becomes the victim of her husband. Despite that, she never shed a single drop of tears. She even learns to non-verbally communicate with women and gets involved with the village women with her imitated smile. Then one day Maria comes to visit her. She tells Navina that she's not the first one to try to fit into a human community. Nevertheless, she warns Navina about the time in the future when these very people would be the ones to tear her into pieces. Later that night, Bosilka's husband tries to force himself on her, and she unfortunately ends up killing him. So deep at night, Navina discards Bosilka's guts and returns back to her own physical appearance and gets going. After reaching another village, Navina takes the form of a dog and gains a different experience by observing a group of youthful men. Reverting back to her original form, Navina seduces a man named Boris. The heat of the moment leads them to have sex. However, she does not like it and ends up killing him as well. Always carry Viagra with you, boys. Now, Navina takes the form of Boris and continues to live his life. The man in the village would take him to the fieldworks, but he seems to be somewhat lost in his own thoughts, and oftentimes men would mock Boris for his unusual behavior. But one day when he's caught playing with the dolls, the villagers believe that he is possessed by the wolf eaters, and as a result the village women perform an exorcism on him and believe it to be a success. Next, while working in the field, Maria comes to see Navina, who is now living as a man. But she instantly tells Boris's body that he cannot fool her by pretending to be one of the humans, and before leaving, Maria once again warns Navina about the future. Meanwhile, after helping a child chop off the logs, a woman signals Boris to follow her. She leads him to have sex with her, and he finds it pleasurable. But this peaceful day is disturbed by a group of screaming children who tells him that a friend has fallen off the rocks. Boris hurriedly goes to the scene and finds a girl lying in the pool of her own blood. Navina, who has never shed a drop of tears, is crying in front of this dying girl, and before anyone arrives, Navina now assumes the identity of the little girl. And later, at the rocks, seeing nobody but only the clothes soiled with blood, the villagers become confused. Later, Navina, as the little girl, Biljana, gets found by her family and friends in the woods. They bring her back and give her all attention she deserves. This is the first time Navina is truly loved by so many people. She then restarts her life as a little girl because right now Navina has friends in her life. She gets to play with them, her family loves her, and she also helps her family with their work. One night the children gather around their grandmother and ask her to tell a story. Just then a child requests her to recite the tale of the old maid Maria. Biljana's ears instantly pick up this name, and she keenly listens as the grandma starts the story. Centuries ago, before becoming a witch, Maria was an ordinary village woman who did the household work and took care of her sick father. But soon her monotonous life started to strangle her. She dreamed of having a husband and a family of her own, but since the entire village was emptied of boys during the cruel period of the country, Maria failed to find any hard meat for her. Then one day Maria encountered an old witch. She initially got scared of her, but finally Maria gathered her bravery to beg the witch for a husband and a child. And in response, the witch dug her nails into Maria's chest, spitting blood onto it before leaving the girl on her own. And a few days later, a man came knocking at their door. He had come to ask Maria's hand for his only son, who couldn't come to visit them because the officials were hunting down all the young lads of the country. Naturally, Maria's father agreed to his proposal. Therefore, she came to the man's house with him. But upon arrival, Maria found out that her soon-to-be husband was severely sick and was in the deathbed. Immediately, she was tied up and the wedding took place against her will. Right after that, Maria's mother-in-law forced her into a sexual act with the man, as she wanted her son to spread his seed before dying, hoping to continue the family bloodline. And shortly after that, Maria's husband died and she ended up being terribly sick. Now, to recover from her weakness, Maria killed an animal and drank its blood, only to be discovered by the villagers They hanged her on a big cross and burned her alive. Consequently, the scratch on her chest by a witch, the spit, and finally the fire completed the witch's spell and made Maria a powerful witch. Back in the present, with the passing of time, little Biljana turns into a beautiful woman. She's successfully adapted to human lives after living so many years. Soon she marries her childhood sweetheart, Joven, who also happens to be a mute. But before Biljana decides to marry him, Maria comes to warn her that Joven would one day find the truth about her and would throw her to the fire himself. However, this proved to be wrong, as they are happily married, and even when Joven sees her long dark nails, he doesn't get scared. And on top of that, Biljana's gotten more than she has ever asked for when she becomes pregnant with his child. But their happy days are numbered, as Maria, in the form of a wild boar, kills Navina's husband. A couple days later, just when Joven's funeral is over, his father blames Navina for the misfortune that has befallen them. But despite this claim, Navina is supported by almost every woman in the community. Finally, her due date arrives. She gives birth to a beautiful child with the help of midwives. Navina becomes overprotective of her newborn and stays hidden in a room. And to help her, the women in the room convince Navina to get some rest as they take turns guarding the child. Then one day, Maria comes to look at the little girl when Navina's gone out to collect firewood. And when she returns, Navina gets scared at the sight of Maria in the vicinity of her child. Now, Maria doesn't take much time and cuts the child's throat, and without contemplating, Navina takes an axe and kills a goat. She then takes a mouthful of blood and spits it on the dying newborn. After this, she contemplates the last step of flaming the wound. Navina would rather make her baby a witch than see her die without having to spend even a few days. Maria's astonished to see Navina go to such a length by using the only witch's spit to save her dying baby. The tears swell up in Maria's eyes as she asks how it was so simple for her to make such a decision. Then, putting the baby aside, Navina walks straight to Maria and pulls out the innards from her chest. And with this, the old witch falls to the ground, and as Navina looks at her baby, flashbacks of all the lives she ever lived appeared in front of her eyes. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thank you for watching.